Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Abby if you are new here, and today we are doing a long overdue Q&A and get ready with me. So if you want to see how I got this makeup look, then keep watching and listening, and I'm going to be answering the questions y'all asked over on my Instagram, so definitely be sure to be following me there so you can participate next time. It's always linked down below in the description box. And let me just say thank y'all for asking some amazing questions. I was doing Q&As for the last, like 2 years and everything, but mainly on my podcast, which I don't do anymore. I realized I hadn't done a Q&A on YouTube literally since I did like my Q&A getting ready for my job's Christmas party for Christmas 2022. So it's been almost 2 years since I've done a Q&A on my channel, and I'm so sorry. But thank y'all for asking some great questions, because I felt like for a while when I was doing Q&As on my podcast, I was getting like the same questions over and over again a lot of the time. I always get questions about like how I stay motivated, stay productive, how I wake up early, maintain a healthy relationship with working out, how I stay consistent with working out. And I feel like I talk about those things a lot on my channel, and I was doing like themed videos a lot last year. And on my channel, if you search like my name and then like a keyword for those things like fitness, or I've talked about a lot of those things and those videos should come up, or if you just look at my videos from 2023, I've talked about a lot of those things in my videos and on my podcast as well, and the podcast titles are very telling for when I talk about them. So I don't want to answer the same questions over and over again, so I tried to answer some more unique questions in today's video. But be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload, and thank you so much for being here, and so excited to share all these questions with y'all today. I have all the questions divided up into different categories, so I kind of grouped things by job and career-based questions, relationship-related questions, and a little bit of married life and wedding questions, since I did just get married on New Year's Eve, and then personal questions. Jumping into the job and career questions and starting out with some skin prep. I'm gonna be going in with the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. I really love this stuff for skin prep because it is super moisturizing. I can get a little bit flaky in some areas of my skin, and of course makeup doesn't set good on top of that. I really love this stuff for skin prep. And the first question is, are you still looking for a job? So if you haven't been keeping up with my vlogs, then you wouldn't know the answer to this, but basically yes, I'm not necessarily sitting here applying to jobs every single day and just like applying to anything and everything. It actually just came out in the news today that unemployment was up in July, so that's great. I'm very thankful I have social media to do right now and for the time being until I find something that's aligned with my career goals and what I want to do. I'm being very intentional about it so that I don't end up in a position where I'm just settling and then needing to find a job again. And like I said, very blessed to be in that position, since I know it's a privilege to be able to take my time with a job search and not just have to be applying to anything and everything. And then to add some glow to the face, even though my face is very glowy, I'm gonna go in with this Physicians Formula Butter Glow Liquid Highlighter on the high points of my face. I love everything from the butter line from Physicians Formula, so I'm sure this won't disappoint me. And the next question is, what kind of jobs am I applying to? So most of the jobs I've applied to have still been in finance and accounting. Instead of being in public accounting at like a firm, it's been in industry or some kind of corporate accounting role. So I've applied to just general corporate accountant roles, senior accountant at companies where I actually like am interested in the product or service they provide. I was applying to like some different retail companies, makeup companies, and then also some financial analyst roles and senior financial analyst roles. But I will say I feel I'm a little bit less qualified for the senior financial analyst roles, just because a lot of them do say 5 to 7 years of experience, as opposed to senior accountants. Usually it's like 2 to 3 years of experience. And there's been a few other like random one-off jobs. Like I did apply to sort of a social media coordinator position that was local in Houston a long time ago and never heard anything back. And then I've applied to some sort of consultant related roles that were still related to accounting, but it was more so of a consultant type role. I'm doing my makeup routine a little bit differently. This is what I've kind of been doing with it being so hot in Houston. A little bit less product and a lot more light layers. I'm going in with my dipstick in the shade Pink Cosmos, and I'm going to contour with this. So going a little bit under my cheekbone instead of on top of it, because that's where I want to put the bronzer. But since this is more of a cool tone, I'm kind of going where the natural shadows are. And I'm doing a technique called underpainting with this, which is basically just putting on your cream bronzer or contour underneath your foundation, but we're going to be building on top of this with some true cream bronzer later, but this is definitely more of a cream contour because of the cool undertone. I'm going to try to mention the brushes I'm using too. I'm going in with my Dibs Duo brush. It's a good bronzer and blush brush, whether it's cream or powder. I'm going to blend this out, kind of just using some light stippling motions and blending upwards. And the next question is, how is the job search going? And honestly, it's not really going great. I have talked about before how it's just like really frustrating because I was just told all of college, get Big Four on your resume and you can go anywhere and do whatever you want. And I did that, and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not doing whatever I want. I mean, I guess you could say I am since I'm doing social media right now, but that's completely unrelated to the fact that I went to Big Four. And I think that's mainly because I don't really have audit experience, and that's what most companies want when you're coming from Big Four is audit experience, just because you have more experience with financial statement analysis, whereas with tax returns, you know, your experience is pretty limited to tax returns, trial balances, and provisions. And it doesn't mean we don't know financial statements and don't know how to analyze a financial statement. It's just not what the bulk of our experience is in. Because like obviously I have my CPA license. I have been ghosted from most companies and like most roles, so I don't hear anything back for most positions. I'd say out of every 10 jobs I apply to, I get a no from 2 to 3, and then I don't hear anything from the rest. And then I occasionally get a yes here and there. Now I'm going in with 2 different concealers, which is really annoying, I know, but I know on average it's taking like 6 months for people to find a job. So knowing that, and knowing that I'm not necessarily applying 24/7, it kind of makes sense that I'm not having the best time job hunting. I'm going in with my NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This is the shade Canal, and I am going on my blemishes with this. A couple mornings ago, I woke up and I had this red bump dot thing on the end of my nose. I don't know if you can see it. And then the next morning I woke up and had the same type of dot right here on the inside of my nose. And then the next morning I woke up and had another one on my forehead. And I don't really break out very often. I'm very thankful for that. And these aren't really pimples because there's no like head on them. So I've been a little confused as to what these are. And to spot conceal with this concealer, this is such a good high coverage concealer, probably like the best you can get for covering up blemishes. This is a little e.l.f. concealer brush that I've had for probably like a decade, and I'm using it to conceal a little bit better since my finger kind of smudged it around. And then on the other side that doesn't have product, I'm blending it out. And I'm sorry, I'm looking right here. This is where my mirror is, and I cannot get ready in a viewfinder. My eyesight's just not that good anymore. You gotta love getting older. The next question is not really related to my career, but it says how to support a partner studying for the CPA exam. Now that we concealed those spots, I'm going in with my Lancome Idlewear concealer. This is the Ivory Neutral shade. I think it's 090, but I'm just going in with a little bit of this, and I'm not going too close to my under eye so that I don't put it exactly where my concealer tends to crease, just to brighten up these areas. And then with tapping motions, I'm going to use this brush that I got from Amazon. It's like $8, I think, and it's a really solid concealer brush, and blend this out. I think the biggest thing, I mean, it honestly depends on your partner's like love language, what they value most, but I think regardless of their love language, something that is super, super helpful is really just helping them with everyday tasks that have to be completed, whether that's their laundry or making them a meal, getting gas in their car for them, anything like that is super helpful. And I definitely value acts of service a lot, so that's something that I really liked when I was studying for the CPA exam, but I also like doing those things because they help me de-stress. So I kind of had a balance of Griffin helping me out and me doing it myself. And I know online doesn't necessarily say these things like, oh, don't like provide 100% or do 100% of the work for your partner. Like, no, you shouldn't be doing that all the time by any means, but if it's a temporary situation and like a temporary sacrifice for them to help them pass their exam, I totally think it's normal and admirable for you to take on some of their housework or chores or whatever temporarily if you're able to, even if it's just some of them. It doesn't have to be all of them because it's temporary. Since I don't have a beauty blender, I'm just using my clean fingers and kind of tapping in the edges of where that concealer was just to help it kind of melt into my face. Now going in with some cream blush. I'm going to use this Fenty Beauty in the shade Petal Poppin'. I have another color of this blush that's discontinued and I loved it, so I want to try this different color. Focusing this this on the apples of my cheeks, kind of going in a circular motion and very lightly dragging up and out, but we're dispersing most of the product right here. I also think encouraging them in small ways is super helpful. I would get like little study snacks for Griffin and have them waiting for him when he got home from work sometimes. Literally just like writing a note so that he would see it on his pillow at the end of like a long day of studying and working. Sending them an encouraging text, just tell them that they're doing well. I think that stuff means a lot more than people think it does. That blush is really pretty, but I want a little bit of something extra, so I'm gonna go in with the NARS liquid blush in the shade Orgasm. This one's like a really pretty corally pink and has some shimmer in it. And the next question is, do you think being a full-time content creator is the same, more, or less hours compared to my 9 to 5? Being a content creator is definitely less hours overall, especially because the 9 to 5 I worked was a lot of unpaid overtime. So that's just the nature of working in tech, unfortunately. So it is less hours overall, but I will say being a content creator is much more of just like a daily situation. Like, yeah, of course you can take days off if you want, especially because you're working for yourself. But I will say in my experience, content creating, you're kind of working on every day. I'm going with the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation, and I have the shade Valaris. I'm kind of just going wherever I haven't already put concealer and bronzer and blush to kind of get everything to blend together. And I definitely like a lot of coverage down here on this bottom part of my face because I feel like that's where a lot of my discoloration is, and definitely blending it onto my neck because I'm a little bit paler than I usually am right now. I love doing this technique. I saw it from Vanessa Stern on Instagram, I think is her name, just because it's so nice because it's not like a full face covered in foundation. It's a lot lighter for everyday wear, especially in the summer. But yeah, my 9 to 5 was definitely a lot more hours and on a consistent basis. Like, it's a consistent 8 to 5. But being a content creator, it's what you want it to be. I'd say I probably work 4 to 6 hours of actual work most days, and on the weekends I'm usually doing like 2 to 3 a day, sometimes more. It just depends on what kind of content I have going on or like what I need to shoot. Some days I have like 12-hour days though with being a content creator. Like, genuinely just depends on what's going on and like what's due. I tend to stack a lot of my work on 2 to 3 days during the week, and then I kind of have less hours on other days. So it's less hours overall for sure. I'd say it's usually like 30 hours a week instead of 40, but it's spread out over like 7 days instead of being 40 hours over 5 days, if that makes sense. And if I didn't want to do like any work on weekends, it would be 30 hours much more concentrated over 5 days. But when you factor in things like responding to comments, DMs, filming and editing short form content, things you don't think about as much when it comes to like being a YouTuber, because I feel like people only think of sitting down and filming videos and editing them. There's a lot more to it than that, and that's where a lot of those extra hours come in. Now I'm going in with the NARS Laguna bronzing cream, and this is where we're gonna bronze instead of contour. And I'm dabbing the excess off just in the lid of this, and I'm kind of going right above where I placed the contour earlier to bronze. So if I were to turn my face like towards the sun, I like to think of like exactly where my face would be hit by the sun, and that's where I put the bronzer. Once again, just doing light stippling motions and kind of blending upwards. This is the Real Techniques 449 brush, and I'm doing this in all the same areas we put the cream contour, just going slightly above where we put the cream contour. The next question was if Big 4 is worth it, and I mean, that's a loaded question because it absolutely depends on your career goals. I think if you're wanting to jump into something post-grad that is challenging, where you're gonna learn a lot and where you're gonna have a lot of resources when it comes to the technology you're using, and if you're wanting to like kind of try out a lot of different stuff, I definitely think Big 4 is worth it. If you're somebody who like knows exactly what you want to do, I mean, you can go straight into that at Big 4 or go straight into it elsewhere, but I think Big 4 is really good for people who don't know exactly what they want to do within accounting, because you can try so many different things. But from a learning and exposure perspective and like a networking perspective, just building your network, it's absolutely worth it. It's a lot of hours and a lot of stress, but you will meet some of like the smartest people you'll ever meet in your life and learn so much. The brush I was using for the other cream blush is this IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Complexion Perfection brush, which is also really good for cream blush, and I'm just using this to kind of blend out the edges of where I put the cream bronzer just now, because there's barely any blush left on it, but it'll kind of make it more of a cohesive look. Going in with my Huda Beauty powder in the shade Cherry Blossom Cake. I really love this powder, but I also really like Polite Society's loose powder that they just came out with. I've been using that too. I'm going in with this little e.l.f. sponge and just tapping the sponge into it, putting the excess on my hand because there's a lot of excess powder that you don't need, and that's what makes it cakey. I'm just lightly tapping this under my eyes and along the side of my nose, and then dragging it up here. I like to put a little bit on my eyelids too, just to give a smooth base for when I put on eyeshadow. And the next question is, do you regret quitting your job or regret becoming a CPA? I got like both of those questions quite a bit. I don't regret quitting my job at all because I think that I really needed to kind of take a break. First of all, I'm gonna bake under the cream contour we had earlier. This honestly feels a little dark to say, but I really don't think that I would have been in a good situation mentally if I would have kept going at Big Four with what I was doing. Even if I wasn't being a content creator, I just am such a people pleaser and a perfectionist, and that just, it's hard not to run yourself into the ground in Big Four when that's kind of like your personality combo. And I'm kind of just stamping a little bit into my forehead too to set this area. And I'm gonna dust it all off with this Jones Road powder brush. So I don't regret quitting it all, and I also think I kind of owed it to myself to like give content creating full-time a try, because I think I would have always wondered like, what if I never tried it, you know what I mean? And I think it just made sense for where I was at that time. So even though I don't regret quitting my job, I will admit, which this feels really weird to admit, please let me know if you've been this way with like your first job or any job. I think about that job daily. There is not a single day that has passed where I have not thought about something that happened at the job or something that I just like did, like a task I had, where I've thought about the people or the teams. I think about it every single day, and it feels weird and wrong. I'm also just using some of the loose powder and going on my neck to kind of set this area too, because I don't want it to transfer on anything. And I'm going in with this contour brush from Real Techniques and this Fenty Beauty Universal Invisimatte setting powder. This is my first time trying this, but I really want to like really heavily set because I am going to be in this makeup for a little while and I'm going to be shooting a lot of content and probably sweating. I'm just kind of pressing this into the same areas I set. And for my CPA, I don't regret getting my CPA. I think that I would have never taken the time to get it if I didn't get it right out of college. So I'm really proud of myself that I like did stick with it and I got it. And especially since I am looking for other roles and stuff, I'm glad I have it. So no, I don't regret getting it. Even if I end up doing something completely different long term that doesn't even require my CPA, I don't regret it because it was a learning experience, and it's definitely easier to get it when you're younger and have like less responsibilities and stuff than it is when you're older. Now I'm gonna go in with the Kosas Brow Pop. I have the shade Dark Brown. I'm not really doing much to my brows. I like to be very careful with this. I'm pretty much just filling in any very sparse areas, but I like to brush them down and then I can kind of see which areas are sparse, and I'm gonna look really crazy for a few seconds, and then I just like to do very light hair-like strokes. The next question is, do you think having a break between jobs is hard for finding a job? Yes, I think it's definitely like kind of traditionally frowned down upon, but I think it's becoming less frowned upon. I feel like I see stuff on LinkedIn all the time of people saying like, stop judging candidates for having a break between jobs, you have no idea what they were going through and all this stuff, which is so true. There have been interviews where people have asked like, okay, well, what have you been doing for the last 6 months, when they realize that I left my last company in December, and I'm just honest with them and I tell them that, you know, I have been a content creator for 7 years and I'm lucky enough that it provides some income for me. So, and I just say that it's allowed me to be pretty selective in my interview process, and I just share with them that while it's like a side hustle and I'm able to do it full time right now while looking for another position, it's something that I enjoy more as a side hustle than a full-time job, because I have had people ask like, okay, well then why don't you just keep doing that? Because obviously it's probably a little bit of a flight risk, I guess you could say, for companies if they think that I'm just going to up and leave quickly because I have something else I can rely on, if that makes sense. I try to emphasize to them though that, you know, I enjoy it more as a creative outlet and a hobby than a full-time situation. So I'm just fortunate enough that I have something to do while looking for a job. The next question is if I've considered getting any other professional licenses or certifications besides my CPA. Honestly, no. I'm like pretty done with anything school related. I occasionally will think about like grad school. Again, I forget that I went to grad school sometimes. I'm like, oh wait, you actually do have a master's degree, Abby. But like a PhD program or something so I can be a professor. But like I genuinely don't think I would do that because I would not do it with a child, and I don't want to start my family like super late. So, and obviously most PhD programs are pretty long, so it just doesn't really make sense for me right now. I'm not considering any other licenses either. The most I could see myself doing is getting some sort of certificate. Say I was trying to get like a financial analyst role and they really wanted me to have like experience with modeling or something, which I don't have experience with. I was a finance major along with my accounting major, so I I do feel like I'm qualified for like more entry level positions, but I'm still not even really able to get those. But I could see myself like getting a certificate for whatever it was I was lacking in work experience. Not saying I definitely would, but I could see myself maybe doing something like that if it was totally necessary or if I thought it would really help. And then going in with the Anastasia Beverly Hills Clear Brow Gel. Oh, and I guess I have to mention, I am considering getting alternatively licensed to be a teacher. So that's like technically a license, I guess you could say. So I'm kind of working on figuring all of that out, and I'm not going to go into detail about it because I talked about it in a recent vlog, and I also talked about it in my August reset, so I don't want to keep repeating myself, but that is a possibility too. I'm going to go in with my Morphe M441 brush and my Patrick Ta Major Dimension 3 matte palette. Of the warm shades, I'm going to go in with this second one on the top to kind of put all over my lid and throughout my crease, and using a really light hand. So if you want to have a lighter hand, hold the end of the brush, and if you want to have a more firm hand and a lot more control of placement, hold it closer to the actual brush itself. I really liked this question. I didn't know if I should include it in the career section or in the personal one, but I ended up including it here in the career section. Favorite thing you found out about yourself since quitting and actually having time? I really love this question. I guess the biggest thing is learning that I don't have to prove myself to anyone. And another one I would say is learning how to be present and content with slowness and not being busy. I think I am seriously damaged in a way when it comes to being able to just be still and be bored. I saw this TikTok the other day, and it was this girl just talking about how boredom is a trigger for some people. I'll try and link the TikTok down below if I can find it. Felt so called out in the video because I've just always had a really hard time doing anything that requires me to just like be still. I'm a very active rester. I very rarely sit down and watch like TV shows and movies, and just always feeling like I have to be doing something and staying busy and just always being productive, and it's just like this really toxic thing. So I guess what you could say that I've learned with that is that I am still valuable as a person, and I am not considered worthless just because I'm not so busy and I'm not being super hyper productive, and learning that I can do valuable work and I can do things without exhausting myself. It's just hard because I feel like I function best when I'm busiest, which is so backward. I get way more done. I'm way more productive when I have a ton of things going on versus actually having a manageable load on my plate. When I have a manageable load on my plate, the free time makes me procrastinate, and I'm actually like way more inefficient when I have less to do. Also, I have my microphone hooked up, and I'm hoping that there's not any issues with it. I did do a test run and it sounded fine, but there are landscaping people outside, so if you hear them, I am sorry. And then going in with my MAC 217 brush. I've had this brush since like 2015, which is crazy. And then going in with the third darkest shade in the palette, and I'm gonna be focusing this one kind of in the outer sort of corner, outer C right here. The next question is, how do you feel being a content creator? Do you like it? I love being able to set my own hours and not really being like tied down to a traditional work schedule, being my own boss, having a lot of freedom. All of that stuff is truly a dream. I will say I miss having coworkers, even though I was mostly working remote before. I miss the benefits in terms of like healthcare and stuff with the traditional job. And I miss the challenge of like the corporate job that I had to. I found it very intellectually stimulating. I felt like I was learning a lot. Being a content creator, you know, I can definitely like learn new things and stuff, but I'm just so equally split when it comes to my analytical side and my creative side that it's really hard, because like a role like being in tax is very obviously heavily on the analytical side, and then being a content creator is like purely creative. So it's just two different sides of the extreme. So I miss that stimulation, and ultimately it can be hard being a content creator because it's just, you're literally creating content about yourself, and that just gets like really old at the end of the day. And I just get really in my head about being a content creator full time, because I'm like, okay, this just feels like so pointless because it's literally just me creating content about my life and myself, and that just feels like really selfish, even though I know that, you know, my content does help people and everything in some way, shape, or form, but you're not really directly seeing your impact, I guess you could say. So it doesn't feel fulfilling in that regard. So while I like it, I just do think that for me, it's not the thing for me to do like full time and it be my only thing. Like if I was ever doing this full time, I would need to have my own business of sorts in order to not drive myself crazy. It's also really hard not to take the metrics and everything personally. money, since it's basically a reflection of how people feel about your life that you're sharing. And it's just hard to keep up. Like if you're an influencer of my size, I'm going in with the Morphe M510 brush, and I'm just gonna kind of blend everything together lightly. Being a creator my size too is like an awkward in between, where you're not necessarily like making all this money to where you can do like really cool things on camera and like do cool trips and stuff, because that's not the kind of money you're making, but it is enough to, you know, get by and everything, and then of course save some too, which is a blessing, but it is not what people I think of when they think of influencers and money. But obviously for the work you're doing, yes, the money you're making is crazy when you think about like how much I can make for posting a video versus how long it took me to make that money in my corporate job, if you were to break it down hourly. Now going in with this random Vanity Planet smudging brush. I got sent these brushes in PR when I was in college. And then going in with this lightest cream kind of shade on this flat shader brush, and going to tap that on the inner part of my eye and lightly above where my eye creases to create the illusion of the eye being a bit more open than it is. And this is just gonna brighten things up a bit. So I do like it, but it's just not for me full-time, long-term, because it was very selfish at times. And honestly, the older I get, like, it just doesn't feel worth the sacrifice of the privacy and peace. But at the same time, I love sharing my life with y'all, and it just like means the world to me that you guys even care and listen. I'm gonna spray the other side of that same brush with some setting spray, and then we're going to use some of the Urban Decay Moon Dust in the shade Space Cowboy. I'm gonna tap this in the exact spot that I just put the other shadow to add some shimmer, really make the eyes pop. I'm going way too slow through these questions, so I need to speed through these. The last question with career related stuff is, how do you feel your relationship with work has changed since leaving your job? I think that now I can see the value in having a job that just, you know, like pays your bill and isn't necessarily maybe the thing you're most qualified for, or the thing that looks best on paper or looks best to other people. So I guess you could say I can just see work differently. Instead of it being like this contest of how good can I look to other people, I can view it as, oh, how fulfilled can I feel while getting my bills paid without running myself into the ground. And I can just see now that I'm on the other side that I don't have to work this super challenging or demanding or flashy job in order to be considered a successful person. And I can also look at my job in hindsight and like wonder why I ever took so much so personally, and just because that's the type of person I am. I care a lot, I want to do good, I'm a perfectionist, I can't stand it when I don't do a good job, and it's something I really struggle with. So while I can see that when I'm out of a job right now, I can't necessarily say that I would still feel this way if I were to step into a new job right now. I would try my best not to, but I can't guarantee it. And now I'm going in with this, I think this is a Sonia Kashuk double edged brush, but really any angled liner brush, and using the brown eyeliner in this Patrick Ta palette. This is kind of like my go-to eyeshadow look most of the time. When I'm wearing eyeshadow, this is what I'm doing most of the time. And I'm literally just doing like a straight small stamp line and kind of flicking very lightly from where my upper and lower lash line meet to create the perfect little wing. And I really love the liner in here because it's nowhere near as intense as like a liquid liner is, but it's a little bit more pigmented than a shadow liner typically is, and stays better than a shadow liner too. And I also like to try and kind of connect it on the lower lash line and just tap into the edge of the lower lash line on that outer part. And that's a super easy, quick wing. And now for sort of like relationship based questions, marriage related questions. The first one is, do you ever see yourself living somewhere else or leaving Houston? And I included this one in relationship because obviously that's like a group decision I would be making with my husband and not by myself. We definitely love living in Houston. I mean, this is like the area my husband grew up in, so like his family's here, his friends are here. He's, you know, at home. Am I? No. He is not crazy about like the weather here. He would love a like cooler climate. I would love to not be in a concrete jungle personally. Nature's just so healing to me and helps me really be present, and we just don't really have that much of that here. So we're not opposed to leaving Houston. It's hard to think about that, especially when I think about like when we have kids. I really don't want to be like moving around a ton and moving the kids a ton if we can avoid it. So we could see ourselves moving somewhere else like before we have kids for a few years, or maybe just when our kids are really young, living somewhere else just to try it out. But at the same time, it's really hard to even imagine living anywhere else just because this is just where feels like home to me. This and Panama City Beach where I grew up are like the only two places that really feel like home to me. obviously, because they're the main places I've lived. So we are definitely not opposed to it. Like if a job opportunity came up for either one of us, I mean, we would not be opposed. And I'm also just taking that liner and kind of stamping it along my lash line. Instead of doing like one drag, I just like to stamp it. Because moving anywhere temporarily just doesn't even feel worth it with how expensive moving is. And with how hard it is to like meet new friends, make new friends, and then leave those friends. And the next question is anything you would change in the months leading up to your wedding? If I could change it, I would go back and just do what I could to be more present and soak it in more, because those last few months were a freaking blur and a half. I very unfortunately don't remember much of those last few months leading up to, and I just wish I would have soaked them up a little bit more, soaked up like being an almost bride and a fiance a little bit more. It was just hard given the fact that I was in crunch time planning a lot of our wedding and working my corporate job and also being a content creator. At the time, it was just a lot, obviously, so it was hard for me to be present. Next question is best and hardest thing about marriage. The best thing is knowing that you have unconditional love and unwavering support for life, and just someone to celebrate the small and the big moments with, or someone to be with you when you're going through the trenches, and being able to just dream big together and like share goals. All of those things are so special to me. I just think it's so beautiful to sort of just like have someone to experience every high and low of life with, and know that you have unconditional love and support in your corner. I'm using this Huda Beauty, I don't think this brush is sold anymore. It's a dual-ended smoky smudge brush. So I'm using the small little pencil kind of side and using this Dior Backstage palette. This palette is so good. I love the blush in it, I love the bronzer in it, and I love the highlight in it. And I'm using the highlight, the white shade, on my inner corners. And another thing that I think is the best about marriage is nighttime giggles. If you know, you know. We get like the nighttime zoomies, and we just will deliriously laugh in bed and like be out of breath from laughing so hard and just having a good time with one another. Totally forgot to do my lower lash line, so I'm going in with the third warm shade here and using the smudge side and looking up and kind of smoking this out under my lower lash line. And so far, the hardest part of marriage for me, from my perspective, I don't know what Griffin would say. Let me just lead by saying marriage is not hard to me. Like, it doesn't feel hard, I guess you could say. Like, you have hard moments, but marriage itself does not feel hard. And if it does, that's probably not the best thing. From my perspective, it's choosing where to settle down and have kids and being far from my family. I know Griffin doesn't feel that way because his family is near. I have my brother and sister-in-law an hour away, which I'm so thankful for, and it would be 10 times harder if they weren't here. So I'm very thankful they're here, but I feel immense guilt all the time about not being close to my parents, and just thinking about like how often I get to see my husband's parents and his family and how little I get to see mine. It just like is really hard, and I get a really guilty conscience about that, especially when I think about when it comes time for us to have kids. But my parents went through the same thing, except it was flipped. So my mom was the one that was close to like her mom, and my dad was the one that like lived far from his family for my life. That's just definitely the hardest for me, is like that realization that I'm not close to my family and they're so far away from me. And that's just part of marriage. I mean, it didn't really feel like a compromise or anything when we decided to move to Houston, because my brother and sister-in-law lived here, so I like loved the idea of living in the same city post-grad as my brother and sister-in-law, and I knew Houston would be the best for both of our careers, and I wasn't going to move back home because there's just like not really anything for us career-wise at this point in our careers in Panama City Beach, Florida. And I knew I wanted something different and new for post-grad life anyways, but you know, the older you get, it's hard to realize like, okay, like my family's getting older and I don't see them very often, and then when you are close to one side of the family but not the other, it's really hard. Now I'm going in with a bronzer in here and this Vanity Planet little angled blush brush, but any kind of contour brush will work. I'm just going in with the bronzer shade here. And the next question that a lot of people asked, or several people asked, was when we plan on having kids. If we plan on having kids, yes, we plan on having kids. I don't really know if we're wanting to have a lot. I think it's just going to be like a see what happens situation, like see what we're blessed with. Obviously, I also don't want to bring a ton of children into the world if we can't like financially support them. So I also want to keep that in mind. But yes, we do want to have children. I think minimum 2. But I think we'd like to have 3 or 4. And as far as when we want to have children goes, I think I mentioned this like a few months ago on my channel. I see like my ideal age to like start being more comfortable with trying as 28, which I just turned 26 in April. So in another 2 years, and I feel like that gives us some good time to kind of like get more settled in our careers and also some more time to just enjoy marriage. I would even be fine waiting until 30 probably. Also for wanting to have, you know, several kids. I don't want to be late into my 30s having kids because I know it'll feel a lot different on my body and probably be a little bit more difficult. I would feel pressured to have them like closer together, which I feel like would be hard. So ideally I would like to, you know, start trying around 28 and then maybe have our first one when I'm like 29. Take some time to figure out if this is where we want to be when we're, you know, starting our family and planning roots. That's where we're at. I always like to blend out my powder products like my bronzer and blushes and highlighter with some quick taps of a big fluffy powder brush just to sort of create more of a diffused look. The next question is, how do we deal with fighting? And I will say we have like matured so much in this regard, and over the span of our relationship, we've been together. October of this year is our 7-year dating anniversary, and we've definitely grown a lot since then. And I'm going in with the Dior blush now, and I'm going to focus it on the apples and kind of lightly bring it up. We always try to maintain an us versus the problem mindset instead of like a you versus me mindset. We are tackling the problem instead of it being separate. And we also always try to get to the bottom of what the other person's like trying to communicate. If we're having a hard time seeing it as us versus the problem though, we try to give ourselves space and time to cool down before we like revisit. Sometimes when you get upset, you get a little bit emotionally reactive, and sometimes I can't articulate how I'm feeling like right away, so I need that cool down time to like really think about what I'm trying to communicate. So then we can revisit the conversation when we're thinking like more rationally and less like emotionally driven. Going in with the highlight now and this Real Techniques setting brush, and just kind of putting this on the high points of my cheekbones, under my brow, right above my brow, and I'm doing a very light dusting of it. My Cupid's bow, chin, and then I like to use my finger for my nose to have more of a precise application. And I like to do just the end of like the button of my nose, and then the very top of the bridge in between my eyes instead of one like stripe down the middle like I used to do. Try to like validate each other's feelings and emotions, which was like a big turning point for us in terms of maturity and just like learning how to listen to each other, because I feel like we used to not be the best about validating what the other person was feeling and validating that they feel upset or sad, and learning that just because we didn't understand why the other person was mad or upset doesn't mean that they aren't mad or upset. Like they can be mad or upset without you understanding why, because at the end of the day you don't get to decide like how someone else feels. We always try to lead our arguments with like acknowledging how the other person feels. So I hear you and I understand that what I said or what I did made you upset or sad, because it helps both of us actually like listen to hear each other. Someone said, what has changed the most since getting married? And honestly, not much has changed, which I feel like you probably hear most people say when they live together before they get married. I'm going in with the Cali Ray Surf Proof Setting Spray. I think the biggest thing is finances, and someone did ask how we do split our finances, and I definitely talked about that like a while ago in a vlog, but we combined all our finances after we got married except for our savings accounts that we individually had before we got married. And after all of our savings and bills are taken care of and everything, anything that's left over we just kind of split and spend how we want, whether we want to save more or invest more, or if we just want to spend it. But so finances is probably the biggest thing, and then also just like the newness that comes to the relationship that you kind of feel when you get married. I'm gonna curl my lashes. It's a really good and like mature feeling. I don't really know how to describe it, but knowing that, you know, you're partners for life and everything, and realizing that we're not like little college kids in love anymore, and that we're adult and that we plan on starting a family one day and stuff, like all the newness of that is like really exciting. And I think another one that's kind of like funny to mention that's changed, I would say, oh, it's not scandalous if like I were to get pregnant, which sounds so funny to say, but like so wrong still. Like if I were to get pregnant, I would feel like it's like the hottest scandal on the block, even though like we're fully married. Now getting into the personal questions, I'm almost done. I literally just have to do my mascara and my lips, so I'm gonna try to go through these pretty quickly, which thankfully a lot of them are shorter questions. Someone asked if I would ever become an F45 coach. Honestly, no. I mean, like if I really felt passionate about it, I would go for it. But one, I think you have to be like certified as a trainer in some regard, and I don't plan on doing that. And the reason I say that is because it would take the joy out of it for me if I had to like be there every day and coach, because it would make me really tired of it really quickly. I'm using Merit's, I think this is called Clean Lash. Yeah, Clean Lash Tubing Mascara. I love this mascara. It gives like a really pretty natural and fluffy look. look. Unless I found like another workout that I really love doing, I don't think I would, because then I wouldn't want to work out there anymore. And why would I ruin a good thing, you know? Like, I actually enjoy going 4 to 5 times a week, which is hard to say for most workouts for me. So I want to keep that up, and I don't want to ruin it by being there too much. Someone asked if I have any big goals right now, and just said that they're like in post-grad and feeling so lost right now. And honestly, when I think about it, like, no, I think the biggest goal is just like trying to identify like my next steps in my career. But there's no like true big goals that I have. I'm really trying to learn to just be present and be content. And I think that we're so used to striving towards some big next thing, because that's what you're used to from elementary school. You know, you think about the sport you're playing or your academics, and then going into high school, it's like, okay, what college am I going to go to? And then doing really well in like your ACT and SAT, and then in college your big goal is like figuring out what you're going to major in, getting a good internship, getting a good job, and then you get the job and you're like, oh, I'm going to be working for the rest of my life. Once you get there, you kind of have to accept that like there's going to be times in your life where, you know, maybe you're not striving after some big huge goal, and you're really just like learning how to be content in your everyday life and be present in your everyday life. And that in and of itself is great to me. I think everyone can learn how to be a little bit more present and not so go in terms of like goals and everything all the time. I will say though, I feel like I'm kind of waiting on this epiphany moment to kind of happen to me, and like, aha, that's what I'm gonna do for my career for the rest of my life. But I'm trying not to believe in that moment coming, because I know it's not going to. But yeah, no big goals, and I think that that's much needed at this point in my life. I'm gonna very lightly do the outer part of my lower lash line. The next question is, what are a few non-negotiables for your perfect or ideal day? This one was hard for me to answer, because it's like, if it's like my perfect day given the variables of my life that I currently live, working out or some form of exercise in the morning, going on a walk on like a trail or something with Ella and Griffin, going on a coffee run and getting a coffee out, going to like a local market or bookstore or something, spending some time in the sun, reading, coming home to a clean and tidy home, maybe getting a drink or a happy hour with like some friends. But if it was like a perfect or ideal day and like a dream life, it would be like wake up, ride my bike to the beach, have coffee at the beach, go surfing, read on the beach. I'm going in with this Milk Makeup Longwear eyeliner in their black shade, or it's called Outer Space. I'm tight lining, which is basically just going on that part of your lash line that's under your lashes instead of over your lashes, and it just really makes your eyes pop. The next question is, what is your gas station order? Oh my gosh, so if I'm going to a 7-Eleven that has Poppy, you best believe I'm getting myself a Wild Berry Tall Boy Poppy. If not though, I love getting like a kombucha if they have it, or one of those Bai drinks, BAI. The coconut flavor is so good to me. I love coconut stuff though. And then snack wise, I love a Take 5. I love like the combination of the sweet and salty. It's like pretzels, peanut butter, dark chocolate, so good. I also love Dots pretzels, like the red bag, or any kind of nuts. I feel like when I go to a gas station, it's usually when I'm on like a long road trip and I need something like satiating, so I like to get some kind of nuts too. How are you mentally doing right now? I had a lot of questions of just like, how are you doing right now? Very sweet, thank you for asking. I have been better and I've been worse. I've been struggling a lot with just fulfillment and purpose, and I think that's because I'm doing something that's inherently more selfish and less fulfilling as a job, because it's so me-centered. I'm trying not to be super hard on myself. I think that I'm very hard on myself with what I'm doing right now, and so worried about how others perceive it, and I really know that I needed this time. I feel as though I struggle a lot when it comes to like feeling valued as a person, and feeling like I'm only really, you know, successful and valued if I'm like doing the traditional things, working a full-time normal job and everything. So I struggle with that a lot, since that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm going in with Charlotte Tilbury's lip liner in the shade Iconic Nude. I love this shade. And yeah, I mean, I've been worse. We've had a lot go on in our lives, and a lot of it I haven't really shared on camera just because it's personal stuff, but it's just been a really, honestly, tough year in a lot of ways, but it's also been a very rewarding year, and it's been a year of slowing down for sure, but we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen, so it is what it is, and that's life. So I'm doing good, could be doing better, could be doing worse. Next question is favorite book of 2024 so far. So this is crazy. I'm gonna give you 3 because I can't narrow it down, and I've read a lot of really good books, so I'm not saying the other books that I've read that I've said were good aren't good. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. It was just so unique, and I feel like I think about it all the time. Better than the freaking movies. I can't remember who wrote that, but oh my gosh, it's literally a young adult novel, and it is so good. I don't know what the author did with her writing, but I was so sucked in. I finished that book so fast. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I wasn't reading it, and all I wanted to do was read it. I think it's because it just made me feel like a teenager again. I feel like we're all yearning for that in some regard in our life in some ways. Like obviously we don't want to be teenagers again, but like the feeling of being a teenager is pretty unmatched. It was just so freaking good, and the author wrote high school characters so dang well. I loved that book so much, and I think the next one comes out really soon, and I want to read the novella in between. I'm rubbing my lips together a little bit, and I'm gonna go in with like the tiniest dot of concealer on my finger, and I'm going to stamp this in the center of my lip, and that's kind of really just creates the illusion of a fuller lip, as you will see here in a second. We're really blending it out with my fingers because it looks a little crazy right now. And then The Right Move by Liz Tomford, which I'm reading the 3rd book in the series right now, and that one is the 2nd one, and it's a sports romance, but her romance novels are just some of the best. Now I'm going in with the YSL Candy Glaze. This is the shade 02, and it's a clear color. I wore this religiously when I would go in office because it just stays on your lips for a long time. This one doesn't really have a color. It's just kind of like this high gloss effect, but it's in the form of a balm. So you don't even need gloss with it, as you can tell, because look at my bottom lip. And just adding that on. It's so moisturizing and like glossy without being sticky and feels so good. This 02 shade is literally so freaking good. It can go on top of any lip liner and look amazing, or it can be on your lips on its own and look amazing. And for the sake of keeping this Q&A going and making this video longer, I am gonna add a gloss, but you totally don't have to with this. But I'm gonna add on the Pat McGrath Labs in the shade Peach Perversion. I've had this for a long time and I completely like forgot about it. It was in the back of my drawer and I rediscovered it recently, and it's really good. And there's like some little tiny gold specks in it, which I normally don't like, but it looks so good in this. Recommendations for someone who wants to read more. Biggest thing, try out a bunch of different genres. Don't like marry yourself to one genre right out of the gate, because you're literally closing yourself off to so many potential things that you may love, and everybody loves different things. The second thing is to like save recommendations you see on Instagram or on TikTok, or things that you hear from your friends, and go on Goodreads. And when you go to one book, like if you search the book, similar books will come up under it, or if you've read a book that you like and you want to see similar books will come up under it, and that's a really good way to find similar things on Goodreads. Or just go on Goodreads, and honestly, if you choose to read anything that's 4 stars and above, you're probably not going to be disappointed. Goodreads reviewers are ruthless, and anything that is rated over 4 stars is probably going to be a good book to you. That's kind of the method I use. Like if something doesn't at least have 4 stars, I'm probably not going to take the time to read it. There are some exceptions to that rule, and a lot of times I still want to read it. I just put it like lower on my TBR, if that makes sense, which stands for to be read, if you were wondering and you didn't know that. This combo is just gives me life. And like obviously if you're reading books that are rated 4 stars and up, like of course you're gonna enjoy reading, because like everybody thinks they're good. Favorite books I'll always recommend, so the ones I just mentioned, the ACOTAR series for sure. Even if you're not a fantasy girl, try it out. The Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage is really good for romance too. They're shorter books too, so they're really easy to get through. And the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver is really great. I love Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and literally anything by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid has got to be like one of my top 2 favorite authors. I don't know who number 1 is, but she's up there. I'm gonna answer a couple more questions since I'm done with my makeup, but I want to answer as many as I can, but I do have to leave in like 5 minutes. So the first big purchase I made, definitely my car, I would say. I bought my car on my own in 2021, and that was definitely the biggest purchase I made. My favorite coffee shop and my go-to order in Houston, my favorite coffee shops are probably Tiny's. If you go to like any Tiny's, like Milk and Cookies or Tiny Boxwoods location, their coffee is so good, and they make their own syrups. I like Brass Tacks a lot, even though they don't make their own syrups. I really like Slow Pokes, Coffee Bar at 4th and Nomad. Mama Cable's has really good coffee. I love getting the iced gnarly at Mama Cable's. And I also really like Bean and Bottle. Go to order, if I'm like going to a coffee shop and I don't know what I want to get, I'll usually get like a honey cinnamon iced latte with oat milk. Do you ever miss college? Yes and no. I really miss like the free time in college, because I feel like in your adult life you don't have like enough of it, and when you do have free time it feels like you should be doing more sometimes. And I also miss like that sweet spot of just pure bliss that you had between like your sophomore and junior year of college, and that like second semester sophomore year and then like your fall of junior year. Those 2 semesters were incredible. It just felt really easy to be present those semesters, because I didn't feel the impending doom and pressure of graduating quite yet, but I also didn't feel like this lost freshman anymore, and I felt like I knew what I was doing and I felt more established. You know, I had like my on-campus job and I had been doing it for a while. I had made a few friends by that point, so I had people to hang out with. I had already chosen my major and I was taking those upper division classes, so I didn't feel as lost in that regard. It was just like such a high. It was just like such a good time, because you didn't like feel like you were quite an adult yet, but you also didn't feel like a child anymore. I don't miss studying though. And of course it's nice being an adult and like making money, but also having more bills to pay. Even though I was pretty much financially independent in college, having more bills to pay is pretty crappy. What are you looking forward to right now? The holiday season for sure. Cooler weather. I'm so excited for cooler weather. I am normally somebody who loves summer and I want to be summer like all the time if I have a beach near me, but if I'm not going to the beach all the time, I can stand summer for like a month tops, and then it's just too hot in Houston to me to even remotely enjoy it. Definitely looking forward to football season, the fall, the holiday season, all that good stuff, and seeing friends and like hopefully being able to host and stuff soon now that our home is a lot more settled after Griffin's studying and getting some things fixed around the house. And the last question, what hobbies did you pick up while working a corporate job? The only hobby I did when I had a corporate job, which obviously you could count like my YouTube channel, but it's more than a hobby obviously because it was a lot more of a time commitment and I get paid from it. But the one thing that like was just by my side was reading. I really got back into reading a lot more intensely when I was working my corporate job. I got back into reading when I was in college. I'd say I really started reading for fun again during grad school, which was really nice. But once I started my corporate job, I started reading a lot more often and really like viewed it as my way to unwind at the end of the day and viewed it as an escape. And that is everything for the Q&A. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload like I mentioned. And thank you all so much for being here and supporting me and for just even caring enough about me and my life to like ask these questions. It's kind of wild to me that like people care enough and they want to know these things. So I appreciate it and it means the world to me and I love you all and thank you so much for watching.